Child trafficking is a horrifying reality which is prominent and growing in Afghanistan. Hundreds of children, mainly boys, are sold, bought, or kidnapped every year. They are used as slaves for labor, organ removal, sex, and sick entertainment.
Schools and parks are prime spots for abductors. Many of the children who are kidnapped are orphans. Many boys are forced to dress as women, put on makeup, and dance in a room full of men. The scene looks much like that of a strip club. While the boys dance to catchy Afghan music, men give them small bills. After they are done dancing, the boys are either sold through something similar to an auction or shared among men for sex.
The children are usually abducted up to the age of 15. The duties that they perform for their abductors are usually the only skill they learn due to a lack of a formal education. Bachabazi boys are taught to dance and entertain. They learn to be play toys for powerful men. As a result, many child trafficking victims become child traffickers themselves, allowing this tradition to continue.
Last year, 750 children were abducted. Ali Ahmed Jalali, Afghanistan's interior minister, agrees that it is becoming a mounting problem and that a lack of education is a factor that is allowing these activities to continue. Men can easily get a hold of these children due to the struggling economy, a non-existent education on this issue, and a deprivation of laws against these acts.
It would seem that people would report the disappearing children, but due to a lack of education on this issue, people can simply turn the other cheek. Even though, as stated by UNICEF Director Carol Bellamy, child trafficking is one of the worst violations of children's rights in the world, it continues to increase in activity today.
The horrible acts and events taking place in this Middle Eastern country seem disgusting and inhumane to Westerners, but it is unfortunately everyday life for the people of Afghanistan.
Afghanistan is one of the world's poorest countries. In fact, it is in the lower 50th percentile of the world with a GDP of 32,000. 30 years of war and a struggling political system are the causes of a harrowing economy. A majority of Afghanistan's income comes from agriculture, although there's only 10% of the land to work with because of damage during war. Criminal activity, insecurity, and a weak government are all factors that prevent the Afghan economy from growing. According to the USAID, about 42% of the population live on less than $1 a day. Even though Afghanistan receives over $60 billion from other nations, corruption in the government restricts any progress from happening.
Revolutionary Association of the Women of Afghanistan stated that about 40% of the Afghan population is out of work and living in poverty. There are another 20% of people living just above the poverty line that risk falling below it at any time.
Owning children has been a long-time tradition among Afghan men to show off their wealth. It is one of the few ways that they can feel rich. The more children a man owns, and the prettier or more handsome they are, the more wealthy he seems.
For the children, being trafficked is an occupation. They are paid a small sum of money to essentially be adopted by the men that come and ask, or in some cases, demand for their services. Parents will sell their children to men for low prices or encourage this in the hopes that the child will be able to bring home money for the rest of the family.
Unfortunately for most of the children, this is not the case. Many will never return home or see their families ever again.
But is it really the falling economy alone that is allowing these immoral acts to continue? Or is the inadequate education on this issue permitting this?
Child trafficking is a subject that is widely covered and taught about in countries other than Afghanistan. Drug prevention programs here in the US are how most children learn about drugs and other harmful materials. It teaches them the dangers of drugs and how to stay away from them. But there is nothing like this in Afghanistan dealing with the subject of child trafficking. Schools are not the only place lacking education on this issue. Police forces also lack knowledge needed to prevent these trafficking activities.
Unfortunately, the UNICEF website states that 45% of children who are primary aged do not go to school. That leaves them in this harmful workforce, which, for them, means participating in degrading forms of labor. Even if a plan were to be proposed, many government officials would most likely drag their feet in approving it because they too take part in these disgusting acts.
The National Action Plan Against Child Trafficking has been developed by the UN for over a year. The plan includes initiation of comprehensive education and community awareness raising campaigns. The Afghan officials have failed to take action in implementing the plan. The people who are most educated on the subject of child trafficking are those involved with no intentions of ending the market anytime soon.
There are only rough estimates as to how many children are being abducted, and not many statistics out there. 50% of the population is under the age of 18. 30% of those children are out of school and working. A majority of children are illiterate, making their futures in jobs other than labor slim to none.
The economy and lack of education are a deadly duo in aiding child trafficking.
Children and their ignorant parents feel that they have nowhere to turn for money except in the child trafficking business. Many parents do not realize what awaits for their children once abroad. Two types of education are lacking in preventing child abductions. Ironically, schools are prime areas for abductors to scope out their next victim.
Many children who are taken go on to become abductors themselves. With a lack of education and years of experience, it is the only trade they know, creating a vicious cycle. If the children of Afghanistan, Afghanistan's future, only know this life, is there much of a future at all? An anti-trafficking action plan was discussed recently in Kabul. The plan has not been approved yet and is not expected to be put into place for at least another 2 months, if at all. A child trafficking prevention program would be an ideal way to reduce the amount of children that are abducted each year. By the time it is enforced, will it be too late for many of the children?